Welcome to All About Capital Campaigns, a podcast that provides fuel for your nonprofit's growth. Each week, hosts Andrea Kilstedt and Amy Eisenstein, co-founders of the Capital Campaign Toolkit, provide practical tips about raising more money for your nonprofit organization. The Capital Campaign Toolkit is a support system for nonprofit leaders who are running capital campaigns. At capitalcampaigntoolkit.com, you can download a step-by-step guide for your capital campaign and get many other free resources. This podcast is recorded on a live webinar every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can join the live session and get your questions answered by signing up today at toolkittalks.com.
So thank you all for being here week after week after week. Many of you I know really are here week after week, and we are tickled to be here. Here's the topic. Talking about how many. We are not going to be here, as Amy said, for 6 weeks, but the first week of that, actually in July, Amy and I are going on our annual business retreat to Maine. A wonderful friend of ours has lets us use her guest house, and we spend several days together doing some blue sky thinking. And that's the topic of today's toolkit talk, blue sky thinking. You know, it is very easy for you, for us, for everyone to get lost in the day-to-day of getting the work done. Right? Everyone gets busy and you have goals to reach and things that have to be done. And you're lucky if you get, or I'm lucky if I get through the list of things on my to-do list that have to be done every day and every week and every month. And you really have to make a decision to stop for a minute and start thinking from a higher perspective, to extract yourself from the day-to-day work and think about where you really want to be going, about what you want to be doing. And that's true, I think, at a personal level, and it's true at a level of your job, and it's also true at the level of your organization, right? Where does your organization want to be? And we thought we would talk about all three of those pieces, and we would begin really by talking a little about our preparation or thinking as we plan to go to Maine, and then find out from you, well, what are the kinds of things, what's the blue sky thinking you can imagine doing, right? How do you want to do, can you set out some time to do some blue sky thinking? And do you do it by yourself, or do you do it with somebody? What's the process that would help you do that? So that's what we're about. While Amy and I are talking some about this and sort of setting the stage, go to open your Q&A box and feel free to ask questions. Now, your questions don't have to be on this blue sky thinking. If you came, as Amy said, if you came with a question about your campaign or about fundraising or about whatever, right? Feel free to put it in. Try hard to keep your questions short. Otherwise, we can't read them well while we have one eye on talking to you and one eye on the list and one eye on the Q&A. It's hard to keep track of it if the questions are long. So,
good.
Right.
We're gonna start. Lori, thank you for kicking us off. We're gonna define blue sky thinking before we dive in. So, Andrea, what is blue sky thinking? You love that term. What do you mean when you say that?
No, what I mean when I say blue sky thinking is it's the kind of thinking that enables you to jump beyond what you already know. I mean, have you ever sat on a beach or on a mountain or someplace on an utterly gorgeous day and just looked out into the blue sky, this sort of infinite blue sky, and said, well, you know, what ideas come to my mind about this? What could I be that I am not yet? What do I want to be? What does this infinite sky allow me to be? What does this world, what do these resources offer that I simply haven't had the time to think about? And what you find, or sometimes what you find, is that if you give yourself or your organization, because this can happen organizationally as well, if you give yourself the opportunity to really spend some time. Maybe you do it walking. Maybe you do it talking with a friend. Maybe you do it just sitting and thinking. Maybe you get your board to have conversations about it. What you find is that ideas come up that you might not ever have imagined just in the regular day-to-day course of work, right? And you may find that you have the courage to take on goals that only yesterday felt totally outrageous. And when your mind does that, when your mind sort of grabs the blue sky, the quality of infinite opportunity or possibility, and you sit with it for a while, sometimes it's just a little movement that all of a sudden makes a whole new way to think and place to go possible. So that's what I mean by blue sky thinking. Did that catch it, Amy?
Yeah, I think the most classic example is when the president talked about putting a man on the moon for the first time, right? Nobody had done it. Nobody had thought about it. They couldn't imagine it. Most people couldn't really imagine it, didn't think it was a real possibility. And then lo and behold, once you say a big, crazy idea, you start to figure out how to make it possible and how to do it. And so thinking about for your organization or for yourself personally, what is the most outrageous idea that you want to achieve, that you don't have a clue as to how it will happen, but what would really achieve your mission? What would make life worth living? What's out there? And then, putting a name attached to it, like having a man land on the moon, right? Then you start to think, well, how the heck would we do that? And then ideas start coming. So I'd love to see in the chat if people have blue sky ideas in one sentence or less for their organization. What is the blue sky idea at your organization?
Mike has chatted in. What about a capital campaign in 3 months? We are laughing, Mike.
Yes. Oh,
here's the answer, Mike. If you have 10 donors who can collectively give you and are already on board and already excited about this, who can collectively give you about 80% of your campaign goal, there is no problem in doing 3 months. In having a capital campaign in 3 months.
Yes. And though, if, and I've been actually talking with Mike about this, Bosade and I have been talking with Mike about this for the past few weeks, so his board is in a big rush to do a capital campaign in the next 3 months. But imagine what they could raise if they gave themselves 12 months or 18 months or 24 months, so I think that by trying to cram it in, you're keeping that thinking small. But, if you have 10 donors who can do that, imagine if you had 20 donors or 30 donors, what you could do. So I don't know. Just wanted to throw that out there. All right.
Let's give you a really specific example. Now, this is an example about our business, the Capital Campaign Toolkit, but we are sort of hot to trot on this as we go off to get ready to go off to Maine. And, as you may know, Amy and I started working on the Capital Campaign Toolkit about, 3.5 years ago, was it, Amy?
Yep.
Something like that. Maybe four. And it took us a while to figure it out and to decide what we were going to do and to build the toolkit and to figure out what the service was going to be. And then we went live, about 2.5 years ago? 2.5 years ago. And, we sort of gradually, figured it out and have grown with it. And now we actually are doing really well. But bigger than that, what we have learned is that the system that we put together for the Capital Campaign Toolkit really works. It is an effective, cost-effective, surprisingly kind of generous way to provide people with capital campaign expertise and services. So as Amy and I get ready, and we have now approximately 50 clients, which we're really happy with. As Amy and I get ready to go off to Maine, we are beginning to think about the idea that we would like the Capital Campaign Toolkit service to be the way people do capital campaigns. Not so much because it's a good business for us, though it is, but because it's a way better way of doing this, of doing capital campaigns, of getting support people need. So we want to think our blue sky when we're in Maine is how do we grow 5 times, how do we serve 5 times or 10 times more nonprofits in this way? How do we open the doors so that people aren't having to have expensive, sort of last century kinds of service, but can grab onto what's possible today? And how can we do more for the nonprofit world, the corner of it of people who are in campaigns? So we are doing a 5x or 10x blue sky.
Bigger than that, right? When somebody says capital campaign, we want people to say, oh, do it the Capital Campaign Toolkit way, because they are the modern, leveraging technology, efficient, affordable, effective way to do a capital campaign. So that's what our blue sky is. You'll be hearing more about it in the fall when we come back from our retreat.
What I think is interesting about that is that this is blue sky, and I think all of you should think this way. It is blue sky thinking based on what we have already done. It's not saying, well, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, though sometimes I wish I could. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and at my ripe old age, become an acrobat, right? As much as it looks like great fun, that's not appropriate blue sky thinking, right? It's not real. It's not based on anything. So most blue sky thinking is grows out of a foundation that you have laid. If it's a personal thinking without boundaries or an organizational thinking without boundaries, right? It doesn't come out of the blue entirely. It has to be based on some aspect of reality that you have already built, or your mission, right? So our mission is to provide the best service for everyone in the capital campaign arena, right? Worldwide, actually. I mean, why not think worldwide, Amy?
Yeah, we do. We do, right?
We do, right?
Yes. Right. All right. Listen, I want to respond. There's been a lot of comments in the chat, which I'm absolutely thrilled about. A few of you have put dollar goals as your blue sky thinking, and I want to push back for just a minute. I want you to think about what those dollars will do for your organization. So to have a goal of $20 million or $250,000 or whatever it is okay. But to me, it's much more important to think about what will that accomplish, right? Providing services for all of our geographic area, or, eliminating hunger in this state, or providing literacy for everybody on the East Coast, or, whatever it is. But so I know we're in fundraising, but it's about impact. That's the blue sky. It's not about dollars. So, then we're going to attach dollars to it. Of course, that comes later. Blue sky is what will you have achieved, or what do you want to accomplish? So I want to refocus us away from the money just for a bit and think about what is that blue sky. Okay.
Yeah. So Janet has asked a great question, and I suspect many of you have had this experience. She says, how can I get my board and leadership into blue sky thinking? I've wanted to schedule a board retreat to work on our vision, but no one will go for it. So Janet, I suspect you're not alone. And it raises several questions. And if I were you, I would spend some time talking to people about why they don't want to do it. That's number one. I would start saying, well, why don't you want to do it? My guess is that people are afraid of it. People are often don't have permission to come up with vision, and they imagine themselves sitting in a room, sort of being asked to come up with a vision and having no structure to it, right? When you bring a board into a room to do visioning, you really need you need structure, right? There's some wonderful exercises you can do. You can get a facilitator to do it. And it has to feel like fun. It has to be exciting and rewarding for the board members. So you have to think creatively about it, even in how you present it. And maybe the first thing you do is to bring together 2 or 3 of your most visionary board members and get them to help you think about, okay, how can we design a day or a half a day that everybody is going to want to do? Maybe you have prizes for people. Maybe you have exercises. Maybe you bring in someone who is a celebrity in your community, right? Who could do something. You have to make it more appealing than just thinking about vision, because many people don't think of themselves as visionaries, right? It gets sort of trained out of people. Everybody is a visionary. If given enough permission, everyone is visionary, but people, it scares people. So step yourself back and design a process that is going to create a fun, lively, exciting day that people are going to want to attend because there is a prize at the end of it, right? Maybe there is a case of great wine and everybody who comes gets to or a case of champagne or whatever it is that's appropriate to your organization. Everybody gets to draw. Maybe there are a bunch of prizes. Right? There are all kinds of things you can do to make this fun and yet still effective.
Yeah. So I had another idea, and I'm brainstorming here, so I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea yet. But, Janet, when your board members say they don't want to do this, I wonder if you could start a little more gently than perhaps a board retreat if they're very opposed to it. Although I think Andrea's right on asking them why are they opposed to it. But maybe an email, a personal email, an individual email to each one saying, if money was no object, what would you have our organization do? Or if we had an extra $100 million, which direction should this organization go in? Or, in 5 years, or 10 years, right? What's the dream for this organization? Why do you serve? And what does our community look like after we're gone or after we've accomplished our mission? Or, you could ask some probing questions, maybe individually. I wouldn't send a blast email. You might not get anybody responding. But if you say, "Dear Sally, I'm asking each board member, but specifically I'm asking you, what's your biggest vision for this organization? What would make you feel amazingly proud to serve on the board of this organization?" I don't know. Just some other ideas.
The other thing to do is that you can provide a variety of ideas to stimulate people's thinking. Right? People often have trouble with the blank page. Mm. So you could pull together a small group saying, let's come up with 5 ideas that are off the wall enough to be interesting, but not off the wall so much as to be ridiculous. And then send them out and say a small group of us have come together and we have these 5 different ideas to, which of these, how would you order these? How would you prioritize these? Mm-hmm. There are all kinds of ways to engage people and to make them want to be someplace, want to be doing something. Sometimes they're surprising and interesting.
Yeah, Gary's saying, get your CEO behind the effort. I would take that one step further and get an influential board member behind the effort. If you can find, sometimes it's mob mentality, right? One person says, well, I don't want to do a board retreat. And then nobody else speaks up, or one other person says, yeah, I don't want to do a board retreat. What if one person said, yeah, I want to do a board retreat. I really want to do some big picture thinking. Other people probably would go along. So talk individually to your biggest, most influential person and see if you can get them jazzed about a board retreat. And then have them spread the excitement rather than it coming from staff. If it comes from another board member, people are less likely to say no to them.
I think that's right. How people function as a group is fascinating. And there are some people who always hang back, and there are some people who always lead in the front. And sometimes there are people who are actually quite quiet, but when they speak, everybody listens to them. So think about the people on your board who are the quiet ones, that when they say something, everyone listens. And go and talk to them about how to do this and how to get it going. So you have to be, anytime you work with a group of people, you have to think carefully about who you want to get involved early, that other people will want to follow. That's actually, we could do a whole session on that, Amy.
Yes.
It's a really important topic, actually.
All right, let's look at Jacqueline's question.
Yes.
For organizations, is it better to have this blue sky thinking facilitated, a facilitated conversation, or have you found that organizations can do it by themselves? And I think I would say that it depends, Jacqueline, right? So I think part of the question is, do you want to have an outside facilitator, or can somebody inside the organization facilitate this kind of conversation? And I think it depends on who you have leading your organization, who's on your board. You may have somebody internally who would be very effective as a facilitator, but I think it's important to really consider who should be doing this, how the meeting will go, and put some serious thought and planning into it. Andrea, you have thoughts on that?
No, I've been distracted here. So
all right, fine. So, no, that's fine. I think, do we want an outside facilitator,
yes,
or can they facilitate it inside?
I think it's often good to get an outside facilitator. Yeah. I do. It's sometimes very hard to get things going on the inside, unless you have a history of really being able to engage the people in your organization. And it has something to do with the culture of your organization. But if your organization isn't used to this kind of thinking, it's probably a good idea to bring someone in from the outside to do that. And if you can, maybe you want to bring in more than one person. Maybe you bring in some special guests and someone to facilitate it, someone to help you think through the process of designing a really good blue sky process. Now, Kimberly has asked this question. We are in the process of updating our strategic plan. Could that be combined with the blue sky retreat? Yes. The frustrating part of people updating strategic plans is that it's almost always incremental. Right? You almost always say, well, we are doing this amount of work in this area and we want to increase it 10% next year. And we are serving this many people over here and we want to increase that 15% next year. Now, I get it, right? That's fine. But that should be combined with permission to think differently. To think about, okay, we know we do this and we know we do it well. Are there things we could do that we really haven't thought about doing yet? Are there things that would greatly increase our capacity to do a lot of work better and differently? So I think they really do go together, this blue sky idea, blue sky retreat and strategic planning. The blue sky stuff should go first and the incremental strategic plan second.
Right. The strategic plan follows the blue sky thinking, because the blue sky thinking informs the creation of the strategic plan. So honestly, if you're doing your strategic plan every 3 years, every 3, 4, 5 years, you should be doing blue sky planning preceding that. And that way, every 5 or 10 years, you're thinking about a bigger campaign. It may not be a capital campaign with a building, but you might do a capacity campaign every 3 or 4 years. Then every 5 to 10 years, you'll do a bigger capital campaign.
The other thing to keep in mind is that some organizational leaders are open to this kind of thinking and some aren't. right? Some are what I used to call bean counters. We still use that phrase.
Yes.
People have more or less propensity to this kind of thinking. So be careful when you approach it. You may or may not have a have the possibility of pulling this off in your current organization. But personally, you certainly have the possibility of pulling it off, even if you don't organizationally have the ability. And we really encourage you to sit down at least once a year, or go take a walk, or sit in a park, and just let yourself imagine what things you want to be doing that you're not currently doing, and how you might do them, and can you do them in the context of the current situation you're in, or not. I mean, these are important questions. If you don't do them sometimes, then you get to be, my age. And I still do blue sky thinking, but my possibilities are nowhere near what Amy's are or what many of yours are, because the years just aren't left anymore. I don't have so many years. So do that. Just do it. And you may come up with fantastic ideas that when you sit with them for a while, they go nowhere. But then you may find the next year something actually caught hold. So grab that time. Don't let the summer go by without doing that.
All right.
Pamela has asked a question that is not about blue sky thinking, but it's a really important question. So thank you for it, Pamela. She's asked, do you think it's valuable to explain the giving pyramid to the Fund Development Board Committee?
Yes.
And the answer is yes.
Yes.
So, yes.
There's no doubt about that. It's a big yes. But let's talk about why that's so important, right? All right. I'll start, and then you can finish, Andrea.
Yeah.
All right. So the giving pyramid, just in case anybody's unsure or unclear, we're talking about a gift table. We call it a gift range chart, a giving pyramid. So any type of table or chart where you are showing the number of gifts and the amount of each gift size to get to your fundraising goal. And so in a capital campaign, you would definitely have a gift range chart or a giving pyramid that says, if we want to raise $1 million, our first gift always, no matter what your goal is, should be about 20, maybe 25% of your goal. So in $1 million goal campaign, your first gift would be $200,000. And your second and third gifts would be $100,000 each. And down you'd go. And so you'd have to have a discussion with your board and at your organization. Do we have the donors and the donor base who could support this type of campaign? Do we have 2 or 3 potential donors in our community who are aware of our organization, who support our organization, who we're connected to, that could and realistically might give a gift of $200,000 or $250,000 to kick off our campaign? Of course, the Fund Development Board Committee has to be aware of how fundraising works. Otherwise, and this chart explains in a crystal clear way how you get to your goal. One of the big fundraising myths that we're always up against in fundraising is that board members are under the, I was going to say misimpression. I can't think of what the word, they believe that everybody gives about the same. And if you wanted to raise $100,000, all you have to do is go out and find 100 people to give $1,000 each. Now the math works. So we're not disputing the math of that, but you'll find, and you probably know, that it's very hard to find 100 people who want to give $1,000 each. It's much easier to find 20 to 30 people who want to give bigger gifts. And so that's how fundraising works. And the board development committee has to understand that if they're going to be effective in helping with fundraising. What would you like to add? Anything to add to that?
Well, I only this, that Lori has asked, where can we access this gift chart? And there is not one gift chart, right? Everybody needs to be developing the gift chart for their own organization and their own goals. But a good resource is in Capital Campaign Masters. And if you go to the website, capitalcampaignmasters.com, which is a sister organization to the toolkit, and you just type into the blog, into the search, gift range chart, you will find a wealth of information about how to create them and what they are, and samples of what they look like, and what to know about them and how to use them. I mean, I have spent a lot of time over the years writing about that. So go to capitalcampaignmasters.com, in the blog, search for gift range chart, and it will get you going.
Andrea, we have to also tell people that a gift range chart,
Yes,
of course, is available inside the Capital Campaign Toolkit to our paying subscription members, in addition to dozens or hundreds of other tools, worksheets, templates, etc. So, of course, you can probably actually just Google gift range chart and you'll get millions of examples of them. But if you want one that's in our Capital Campaign Toolkit, along with all of our other tools, of course, they are for our subscription paying members.
Yes.
All right.
It is a fundamental tool, not only for capital campaigns, though, but really for all fundraising. You should have one for your annual fundraising. You should have one for your events. You should use them. It should be the basis of your planning for almost all fundraising.
All fundraising, yes. So I want to add, though, since I mentioned our paid subscription, that we are actually doing a special summer sale, just really focused on you, our Toolkit Talks loyal attendees. So this summer, actually for the next 2 weeks only until the end of June, we are running a sale. We're a discount. And so right after this toolkit talk, you should get an email with a special code. It's actually SUMMER, all caps, and then the number 500. So SUMMER 500. It will give you $250 off your subscription in July and $250 off your subscription to the toolkit in August, so that you can see what's inside and test us out and hopefully decide to use us for the rest of your campaign. But it's an offer that we want you to take us up on this summer while we're taking off for the summer for Toolkit Talks, because we will continue our weekly calls with our paying subscription clients. So if you want to keep seeing Andrea and myself and all of our other advisors all summer and not miss us while we take off from Toolkit Talks, you can join the toolkit and have access to our members only weekly chats.
Yeah, those are actually small groups. We tend to have 8 or 10 or sometimes 12 people per group. So everyone has a chance to participate actively. They're Zoom meetings, and they're really great fun and interesting. Amy, there are a number of people. Well, there are 2 things I want to pick up here. Jacqueline House has said some people have no experience with this kind of blue sky thinking and don't understand how it can propel an organization forward. I think that is certainly true, Jacqueline. And you don't have to dive in with a full-blown day of visionary thinking, right? You're going to be barking up the wrong tree. But you can, at some of your board meetings, you can set aside 20 minutes to do a little exercise, right? And the book that Andy Robinson and I wrote has some good exercises in that. One of them is the headline exercise that just comes to my mind. And you give everyone a what do you call it, an index card. And you get them to write on the index card a headline that they would like to see in your local paper in 5 years that captures what your organization has been able to do. And the key to the headline is that it cannot include the name of your organization. Now, that may seem funny, but that forces people to think about what it is you will have accomplished, right? Every teen in our community is going to college, right?
Okay, type in the headlines. Go ahead. That's your right now in the chat. Let's see what headlines you can come up with.
And
what will
don't use your organization's name in the headlines. Don't say, such and such an organization is going to be the best ever. That's boring. It's gotta say, well, if you're the best ever, what problem are you addressing and taking care of and eradicating?
Right.
Then you can say, all right, now we've looked ahead 5 years about what it is we want to do. Now let's say, well, what if we really wanted to do that? How would we think about making that happen?
Right.
What would we have to do today to get us on that road?
Our community went from a 10% illiteracy rate to 1% literacy rate in just 3 years or 10 years or whatever it is. All right. So let's see if you can think of some headlines. Yes. Thank you, Pamela. Everyone in our city has a roof over their head.
I love it. Right. Yes. That's a great headline. What's going to happen if you get each of your board members to write a headline right around the table, and then everyone shares their headlines, and you can post them on a board in front, and then you can talk about how you're going to prioritize them. Did people write the same things, or did they write different things? What are the ones that have come up again and again? Right. So even there, in 15 minutes, you have a little blue sky retreat.
Yes. All right. We're going to read some of these, Andrea. They're so fantastic. Low-income older adults have safe, affordable, secure housing.
Yes.
Every child has a loving, caring home. I love that, Jacqueline. Janet says, no one child has drowned in our community in 5 years. Yes. So these are amazing, right? 250,000 women and girls are newly empowered and educated through education. Heroism. Yeah, I mean, endless, great suggestions and great headlines. What other ones?
Just imagine how that just a 20-minute conversation may well plant the seed to do something more on whatever it is you've come up with your board came up with in 20 minutes.
Right. Look at this. All families have access to safe, quality, loving birth care, right? So all sorts of ones.
A museum and cultural center is leading tourist attraction in the state, right? You can imagine that's a cool headline, right?
Yes, there's lots of cool headlines.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. I don't want to ignore Patty's question here in the chat, and we'll touch on in the question box, and we'll touch on it briefly. Patty is part of a pediatric hospital in Honduras, and they are dependent on government funds, but want to have some donors and become more self-sustaining. So, Patty, I think this is a challenge no matter where in the world you are, that so many organizations want to be more self-sufficient and self-sustaining. And the challenge is, how do you attract donors who care and who have the ability to fund your services and programs and organization? I always think that it starts with the board, right? Who are you able to attract to your board? Who is committed enough to agree to serve on your board? So the question is, who in your community and who outside your community would care enough to volunteer first? And then it snowballs from there. It's not an easy or quick thing to do. If anybody else has words of wisdom for Patty on how to get her fundraising started, be happy to see those comments in the chat, but yes. I did want to acknowledge that question was there.
Amy, it's been on my mind. Actually, there are several organizations who have been asking questions like this, particularly the organization in Uganda and some in Africa or other countries where fundraising is not as ubiquitous as it is here. And so many people are looking for so much help. So that does give you a challenge, but the way to think about it is no different from the way to think about it even here. And that is that you have to look carefully at your community and see who has a reason to be seriously interested in solving the problem you are setting out to solve. particularly who in positions of power, and I don't mean necessarily governmental power, right? But who has a network of people that they could bring in. And you need to just start talking to people, telling them what you're doing, seeing if they have an interest in what you're doing, understanding why someone might be interested in what you're doing, and putting together it might be a small study group, for example. How can we put together a board for this organization here? It may be that you have some people here in the States who are particularly interested in the challenges in your country, who do work in your country through an aid organization of one sort or another. But the trick of fundraising always is to find the people who have a reason to care about what you do. And everyone always thinks the trick of fundraising is to find people who have money, right? And that's seldom the first thing to think about. You need to think about the people who care deeply about what it is you're doing and understand why they care. And then find out how they might help lead you to other people who care. And some of those people will be people who have the capacity to help you with fundraising.
Excellent. I think that's exactly right. All right. I want to go back to this idea of blue sky planning and thinking from abundance. We had started the conversation earlier today. Before we got on the phone with all of you, we were talking about how blue sky planning is related to thinking from abundance. And I think in part, it has to do with language that you use in your board meetings and when you're speaking to board members and how you're speaking in staff meetings. I always, whenever I'm facilitating a board retreat, I like to correct people when they say, I have to fundraise, and I say, you get to fundraise, right? What's the difference there? Do you have to fundraise, or do you get to fundraise for this amazing cause? And are you twisting people's arms or guilting them, or are you inspiring and motivating them, right? So how are we thinking about fundraising? Are you thinking about it from a position of scarcity and lack? Or are you thinking about it from a position of abundance? Because truly, I believe that there is enough money for all the causes. And the question is, how do you go about approaching it? Because the organizations that come to us, we get calls every day. We want to do a capital campaign. I would say more than half the organizations say, we know we can do it. But plenty of organizations say, we don't think we can do it. We don't know how we're going to do it. And we think, how are those organizations going to be successful? Because what happens is the organizations that say, we have to do it, we know we're going to do it, we're excited about it, we don't know exactly how we're going to do it, we need your help and direction about what to do next, but we have to make this happen. And they're going to take any action necessary that they need to do to make it happen. They're going to make phone calls. They're going to write letters. They're going to sit down and have meetings. The people that think, we probably can't really do it, then there's no reason to pick up the phone. There's no reason to make that extra email or, to stay late or to do what they need to do. So there really is a mindset to this blue sky planning and to thinking from abundance. And I want you to really think about what language are you using around your board members. Are you being positive? Are you being negative? How are they feeling after they speak to you, or when you hear from them, when you speak to them? Is there a negative tone generally? Is it positive and forward looking? All right, that was my tangent.
I think that's a terrific tangent, Amy. I've come to believe that most of the people who can think from abundance are a people who have a deep passion for their mission. That it takes courage to think from abundance, right? It's not just a game. It actually takes courage because you are envisioning that people would give you more money, that you would have more money, that you would be able to do more. And anytime we make a change, anytime we shoot higher, anytime we try to extend higher, and particularly for women, I believe it's really easy to think, well, I can't do that. I don't deserve to do that. I'm not in a position to be able to do that. And what often gets people beyond that is when they have an incredible commitment to the mission that their organization is trying to solve. And that commitment to the mission helps them get beyond their jitters, helps them say, all right, I feel anxious about this. I feel anxious about thinking so much bigger, but I really believe that all animals deserve a safe place to be, or whatever your mission is, or that all children need an education, or that the medical care in our community needs to be fantastic, or that everyone deserves great capital campaign toolkit, great capital campaign service. I mean, that's what drives us. That's actually what drives me. I think everybody should get the best of service, and because it will strengthen the way they all function. So I think it's very easy to be stopped by your own anxiety. And the way to get out of that, just to repeat it, the way to get out of that is to spend some time really recommitting to your mission in a big and personal way. And that will let you get beyond your natural breaks, natural governor.
Yeah, I think, honestly, these calls are just as motivating and inspiring and empowering for me and Andrea as they are for you. We so appreciate you joining us each week. We unless somebody has a question, we may wrap up a couple of minutes early here today, but I do want you to think about our blue sky thinking as we get ready to head out to our retreat in 2 weeks. We've got one more toolkit talk next week that I hope you'll join us for on, I guess it's probably the 28th or June 28th. We'll see you then. But our blue sky thinking is we set out to change the way organizations approach capital campaigns. We set out to change the sector and the way capital campaigns are done in our sector, and really to educate all nonprofit leaders about how to run effective, affordable, efficient, and successful capital campaigns. And you're all part of that. And we couldn't be more thrilled to have you with us each and every week. So Andrea.
Those of you who will join us next week, because we are then going to stop for a bit as we go to Maine and think, we also will be thinking of ways to make these toolkit talks better. So if you have suggestions and thoughts about that, just, we may or may not be able to do them, but we would welcome you coming to the call. We will spend 10 minutes or so next week saying, okay, what are your ideas about how we could make this better, how we could make it appeal to more people, how we can reach more people in having these toolkit talks, right? And we will factor your ideas into our blue sky thinking as we go to Maine. Now, I want you all in these last couple of minutes to imagine this. We will be in the most lovely part of Maine. We're going to be in Freeport, Maine, in a lovely house, and we will take walks every day and probably eat lobster, I would imagine. Amy, do you eat lobster? I don't know. Maybe you don't eat lobster. Anyway, we're going to eat good food and pick vegetables from the vegetable garden and maybe do a little shopping in one of the little villages. That'd be fun. And sit carefully and think spaciously. Right? So
all right. Yeah. Go ahead.
I wish that for all of you too.
All right. So listen, you'll be getting an email in the next 30 or 40 minutes, I hope. And it is going to remind you to join us as a subscribing member with our discount. So I hope that if you really want to start seriously thinking about a capital campaign or ready to implement, We do hope that you will join us as a Capital Campaign Toolkit subscribing member so that we can see you in our small groups and you can have access to all of our online tools and resources. All right, everybody, we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks,
Bye, Andrea.
everybody. Good to be with you. Thank you for all your wonderful headlines. They sure made me happy.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for joining Amy and Andrea for today's All About Capital Campaigns. To learn more about them and their work together, go to capitalcampaigntoolkit.com.